Yes. Okay, hello everybody. Tonight I'm really ecstatic to be speaking to Andrew Johnson. He's one of my heroes when it comes to 9/11 truth and helping people to understand where the towers went. He's been involved since the get-go with the formation of the Scholars for 9/11 Truth in 2005, and he's been the right-hand man of Dr. Wood for many, many years. And he's actually written two books, 9/11 Holding the Truth, 9/11 Finding the Truth, that you can find off his website, checktheevidence.com. It's free downloadable, or you can also order the paperback books from his website. So Andrew, it's very nice to have you here. I just want people to find out how you ended up in Scholars for 9/11 Truth, and you can basically pause there because I've got a short little clip ready just to give people an over idea of who and what Scholars for 9/11 Truth was. So please take it away.
Well, thanks for inviting me on your podcast, Norman, and thanks for all you've been doing with the blogs and the videos and all those things. And I'll just introduce that side of things a little bit. So we've talked a bit about this before, in that my style is I'm not particularly adversarial and confrontational, whereas you are, which is fine. I'm not. It's not a criticism. I think sometimes things can get a bit heated, which I suppose I say, well, let's not get heated, but maybe I'm wrong, because it's hugely important, as we both know. So I think it's, if we were to put us both together, perhaps the balance is in the right place, in the middle of where each of us is, sort of thing. So I just wanted to say that, because that I think that's worth saying at the beginning. So going back to your question, one of the reasons I got involved with Scholars for 9/11 Truth is I'm kind of a pseudo scholar, you might say. I describe myself as a pseudo intellectual, much to the chagrin of my girlfriend, but that's essentially what I am. Because I don't have any PhDs. I did a degree in computer science and physics. I'd never done any advanced degrees. So what happened was, I started looking at 9/11 in 2003 when I had this sort of awakening with this disclosure project. I've talked about that many times before, and I know you've posted clips and stuff. And then I found out in 2004, really, that the official story of 9/11 was not true. And the thing that really triggered me initially was this film called 9/11 The Great Illusion by George Humphrey. It's still out there. I think I did look this up. So you can still find it. And the thing that stood out to me in that film, it covers a lot of the Bin Laden, and it covers about Hamid Karzai, who was this Unicali employee, and he became a leader in Afghanistan, but he was an oil company employee, and it's got all that stuff in it, and a lot of the political stuff. But the thing that really stood out for me was they had a picture of the World Trade Center, and they did this free fall calculation, and they did it a slightly funny way compared to how I would do it from the equations of motion in physics. Saw that and I thought, oh yeah, that proves it then. That right there proves the whole story is false. I didn't say this, but you almost don't need anything else. The free fall proves that this story, the whole thing, is a scam. And so then what I did was I did this calculation. I redid the one that was shown in this video using, I think it was shown in feet and feet per second and things, because it was an American video, and I did it in meters per second. So, the acceleration due to gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared. The height of the towers is 1362 meters, and you come out with a free fall time of 9.18 seconds or something. Can't remember the exact figures. And I wrote this little thing out. S equals ut plus half at squared, and then u goes to 0 because it's a free fall. Initial velocity is 0. And then I took that and I went over to a physics forum, posted that on a physics forum, this equation of motion, very, very simple calculation. You could do it at sort of, 7th grade or mid-grade in secondary school. And then this drew about 5,000 responses on this forum. And this thread ran for about 18 months. and nobody could give me a good answer to this. And kind of this was, so I had a similar kind of entry into it in my mind to what Dr. Wood had, because as you probably heard aware from what she ended up doing, and we'll get to that in a little while, she did this billiard ball example, and that was to do with the free fall as well. It was more sophisticated than what I'd, sort of put there, and rightly so. But it was an obvious entry point into showing that this could not be true. This story of this so-called collapse. And then, so that physics thread ran, and I was talking to people like David Shaler and Annie Mashon and people in London and blah, 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 getting to know a few people who were sceptical. And this is back in 2005. And then I get this email from Stephen E. Jones in 2005. I think I'd found that this Scholars for 9/11 Truth group had started. I maybe clicked on their website and signed up for a newsletter or something like that. I can't remember the exact order of things now without going back to my book or my notes. And but I distinctly remember it was the end of 2005. I think it was December. And I got this email from Jones saying, "Oh, please invite Andrew into the Scholars group as a full member." And that when they were doing this what turned out to be a scam, this group, they had 3 levels of membership. I think they had student member, associate member, and full member. So obviously student was for students at universities, associate member was other academics, and a full member was for people that were either professors or they had an advanced degree at some university, or they were tenured at a university. And Steve Jones said, "Oh, please invite Andrew in as a full member." And I later learned that this other lady who was managing the memberships, called Ginny, she was given my name by Jones and said, "Oh, this guy's got to be a full member." But she then said, "Well, that's not right, because he's not a professor, and he says he's not a professor." Because I just said, and I was only working part-time for the Open University, because that's my background, you see. I actually do work for the Open University. I still work for the Open University. Been working for them for 20 years. But I don't have any advanced degrees. I'm just a tutor. I just, do online lectures and stuff. I haven't done any research for the university or anything like that. And so this woman who was looking at these, that's a bit weird. Why are they inviting this guy? So they were bending their own rules from the get-go, the admission rules. And but I didn't think anything of it. And then I think I must have seen some of Dr. Judy Wood's postings on the Scholars Forum, because Jones had set up this forum in this little corner that he had some administration of. And then we got the Scholars for 9/11 Truth website going. Somebody set that up. It wasn't me. And then I learned that Dr. Wood was actually editing this website, and she's not a webmaster. She'd self-taught on HTML and setting up web pages and stuff like that. But they got her running this website. She was just trying to help out, not knowing what was going on. And of course, she had all this fantastic research, which she'd gradually been putting out. She first publicly posted something in 2004, 3 years after the initial events, having been skeptical on day one. So I was playing catch up, really. So Fetzer and Jones, they were ping-ponging, and everything was all fine and dandy, and they were writing press releases and, "Oh, this is great, we've got some professors now, and we're going to get going now, and we're really going to make an impact with people like Professor Fetzer and Professor Jones. I mean, come on, we've got to make an impact." And I was just riding on their coattails, really. And then Jones says, "Oh, I've got this paper about thermite, and I know that it looks like thermite was used." I thought, "Oh yeah, maybe he's right." And we saw this molten metal video that he showed. I thought, "Oh, flipping out, yeah, he's on something. And he's a physics professor. He must know." And then he'd done this lecture, and I made a video of one of his lectures. So he sent me his PowerPoint, and I made it into, because I think we just had the audio. I don't think we had an actual video of the lecture theatre. So I took this audio, married it up with the PowerPoint slides, made it into a video, and I sent that back to him. And I think that was when we had this thermite molten metal clip, and that would have been, I don't know, March, April 2006, sometime around then. And I thought, "Oh yeah, that's really great. He's done this lecture." And I actually spoke to somebody at the Open University to see if I could do a version of his lecture at the OU. I actually wrote to the Vice Chancellor, and her name was Brenda Gourley. She's long gone now. And she wrote back to me and said, "Oh, no, well, I don't think you should do the lecture, Andrew. But if Jones wants to come over and do it, he can. And I don't think I wrote to Jones to ask him, thankfully. But that was a good decision by Brenda Gawley. I shouldn't have presented his research. That would have been wrong, really. But at least she was receptive to it. So anyway, Jones and Fetzer were ping-ponging, and then Dr. Judy Wood started posting stuff, and she was saying, no, you can't say that this was thermite. You don't have enough evidence. And in fact, I don't think it's that at all. It doesn't really explain very much. And so I saw that voice of skepticism towards the end of 2006, and I was drawn to that. And Morgan Reynolds and Judy Wood were creating a bit of disruption on Jones's forum, and he was saying, oh, we've got these two disruptive scholars, they're spoiling everything, and they shouldn't be doing this, they're bringing the scholars group into disrepute and all this malarkey. And that kind of escalated then over the next few months, and they produced this article called Why Did the Trade Center Towers Turn to Dust, I think. I forget the exact title. Why did the World Trade Center Towers disintegrate? And it was Morgan Reynolds and Dr. Judy Wood. They put this article together. But built into that article was this criticism of Jones and the molten metal and the thermite and all of that stuff. And I was sort of rubbing my chin reading this. And then I was reading this article, and then they said, when you asked Jones about this thermite video, you realise that he got somebody else to splice these two clips together, these two clips of this molten metal. And it was Andrew Johnson that did this. And I thought, oh, he has mentioned my name. That's a bit weird. And so I wrote to Morgan Reynolds, and I said, yeah, I did do that. I just thought I was helping him out. And he said, he just wrote back and said, thanks for telling me, and that was that. So at least he replied. And then I somehow got onto this email list, and there was Morgan Reynolds, Dr. Judy Wood, Jeff Strahl, Russ Gerst, Rick Reiter, I think, was on there. This other person called, what's her name? I'll remember her name in a minute. Veronica Chapman. And then there was Web Fairy was on this list. Rosalie Grable, no longer with us. Gerard Holmgren, he was on it. He's no longer with us. He did a lot of the early no planes research, and a few other people. And we were ping-ponging all these emails, saying, oh, Jones is, there's something wrong with Jones. What's going on with Jones? Blah, 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 blah. And I think Dr. Judy Wood, she did a presentation at the engineering conference. Then I think she did one in Seattle, was it, in 2006? And I think it was this 2006 one. I think it was in Seattle, was it? And that was like the first time where she started to present some of this energy effect evidence in a PowerPoint in public.
I think that was the new Hiroshima presentation, I think.
It was no, I don't think it had got to that yet. That came a little bit later. There was the one at it was called the Cooper Union. I think that was the name of the place. And it was like early 2006. The new Hiroshima presentation was next year, 2007. That was August, when Fetzer organised that conference.
In Madison, yeah. We're going to be touching on that
Madison,
soon with
yeah.
the clip,
Yeah. So that was the next year. And I think Morgan and Dr. Judy and Dr. Morgan, they had done this presentation at the Cooper Union. And that was 2006. And they pretty much had the sort of all the foundations there, really, of what was to follow, really, and I don't know if because those presentations weren't widely distributed, and I don't know if they're available now. They might be somewhere.
Very difficult to find. I've found the new Hiroshima one. I found the Madison one. But the first one of hers in 2006, I haven't come across that.
No, I might have it somewhere on my archive. I'm not sure. I probably haven't, because it was a lot of it's out of date now anyway. Because by the time she got to 2007, she'd really and kind of what happened. Fetzer took Dr. Judy under his wing, really, and she did kind of. Although Fetzer's a flipping evil sod.
No, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think let's quickly play this Scholars for 9/11 Truth clip that I put together so that we can just see how it goes, because basically when Morgan Reynolds and Dr. Wood got into things, that's when a bit of a split happened. So let me just do my share screen real quick.
Okay.
I've got to remember to share sound and optimize video sharing. Overlay, share, and put that in. And video. And bring.
In 2005.
And just bring this over here. Let's have a listen.
Jim Fetzer, Professor Emeritus from the University of Minnesota.
Can you see it, Andrew?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, no worries.
And you can hear?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay,
That sounds good.
Super.
And noted JFK assassination researcher, teamed up with BYU nuclear physicist Stephen Jones to create the Scholars for 9/11 Truth.
So I'm very, very troubled to have been forced to that conclusion that the man I made the co-chair of Scholars for 9/11 Truth when I founded it in December of 2005 actually was an expert in promoting what I regard as a limited hangout, the nanothermite theory, which, as I've explained, cannot possibly explain the data. In fact, just to illustrate its absurdity, Niels Harrit, who was an associate professor at the University of Chemistry at the University of Copenhagen, emeritus, when asked how much nanothermite it would take to destroy a twin tower, he said 29,000 metric tons. 29,000 metric tons of nanothermite to destroy a tower, Joe. I mean, how absurd is that?
Yes, on their misinformation publication that they put out with one of their DVDs, the Architects and Engineers for 911 Truth said that it takes 0.13 pounds of thermite to melt each pound of steel. Well, if you're missing 100,000 pounds of steel, tons of steel, how many tons of thermite? Exactly. Yeah, that they've absolutely proven themselves to be relaying false information if they can't even do the basic physics involved in that calculation.
Yeah, it's deliberate obfuscation, Joe. I mean, this is misleading.
The truth movement won't even discuss the airplanes. The interesting thing is, a lot of people controlling the truth movement know all about this technology, and they're actively trying to cover it up.
Give us your background, some of the publications you've written for.
Sure. Let's see, Los Alamos National Lab. Article is Cold Nuclear Fusion. Principal investigator for the Department of Energy.
Amazing. So you've headed up investigations for the government before.
Yeah. Well, I've been around the block a few times.
So Jones, I think, knew about all of those effects and was briefed on some of them as well, if he didn't already know. I'm pretty sure of that.
The cold fusion part of it. In fact, that was the title Paul Palmer and I gave to what we were doing, which is, we sometimes called it metal catalyzed fusion because the fusion occurs in metals. Fusion occurs in metals and metals and metals.
The connections that Jones has between the cold fusion experience that everybody can read about in Dr. Malov's book, and with what's going on right now with the 9/11 situation, it's just a mirror image of him muddling up 9/11.
Eugene Malov died. I didn't know that when I made my first film.
Oh, did you not? Oh, yeah. I became familiar with him and his work about a year before he died. I think they killed him basically because of Jones. Because I think that as soon as Jones came on the scene, Malov would have smelled a rat. He would have known. When Jones was talking about 9/11, Malov would have known there was a connection between cold fusion and 9/11 straight away. He talked about it wasn't just thermite; it was thermate, which is where you add sulfur to the thermite, because he said that there was sulfidation of the steel.
It's a good question, but there is an answer. The answer is with sulfur added.
So what I think why Jones said that was in case anybody detected this sulfur in the steel, and then they'd say, oh yeah, well that's the thermite. So essentially the only way to muddy the waters is just...
Okay, so that's one piece over there. Then we need to go back to Fetzer, because the first two gentlemen that were speaking was obviously Fetzer and then Joe Olson. They are the nuke proponents or the mini nuke proponents, even though they don't have any proof to say or say where it was or anything. They just blurt out a statement that it's mini nukes. And as you mentioned in the beginning, that Fetzer initially was really pro Dr. Wood. He gave a time on his radio show, and that's one of the spiels he always goes into with regards to what he did for her. And then he basically turned around and stabbed her in the back. And a lot of people don't really realize what a 180-degree turn the gentleman made. And this little clip that I'm going to play now is basically just to show what he had to say about Dr. Wood in 2007, some of the presentations he did. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we'll go over to his Toronto stuff, and then a interaction that I had with him around about let's say 2-3 months ago. So the first
there's a couple of things I can probably add to before you get into that as well. Yeah, but carry on, play the clip if you want.
Okay, let's go. Let's put this in here.
The speaker to begin this afternoon's session has degrees in civil engineering with a focus in structural, in engineering mechanics, which is also known as applied physics, and a PhD in materials engineering science, which, as far as I have been able to discern, are the disciplines that are most directly relevant to evaluating what actually happened to the Twin Towers and at the World Trade Center in general. She's a former professor of mechanical engineering at Clemson University. In my opinion, she is the single most qualified scientist to be studying these issues. Please join me in welcoming Judy Wood.
Something very sophisticated.
Any idea what kind of EM weaponry?
No, but we're looking more closely at what's available now. For example, on her website, drjudywood.com, Judy's added now a new appendix about multiple kinds of weapons in the laser families. We've discovered there's a 747 mounted version that has tremendous potential to deliver from the air. And of course, the use of satellites, even for reflective purposes, has always been a serious possibility. In 1991, experiment was conducted with a low-intensity laser reflected off of a mirror in space and came back and hit its target on Earth. So this has been around for quite a while.
Now, that's a Star Wars program, and then I just want to fast forward a bit. Just want to see where we're going to go there. It's okay, so it should be around about over here at the 6-minute mark.
The real deal.
Well, so we don't have any specifics on what exactly, I mean, we just have guesswork on what exactly type of EM weapons, like you already said, the space-based programs. We don't have anything
but
specific.
what we have are effects that do not appear to be explainable on any other basis than some new kind of high-tech weapon. And notice the ingenuity. Notice the ingenuity in doing this. Yeah, it's the pulverization of the building, the thoroughness of that, but also that gouge in Building 6, the cookie cutter incisions in Building 5, 4 half gone, half intact, 3 of that huge gouge. These are all very strange phenomena. And we have, therefore, a class of effects that seem to be inexplicable in the government's account or on the conventional explosive account. I just don't see any way they can explain them, not to mention the toasted cars.
You know, people are going to ask, what about the debris falling off the buildings? Couldn't they have made the hole?
Yeah, but you may recall I mentioned in passing, you'd expect that to be a rather random phenomenon. You'd expect similar kinds of damage from all this debris, which was being blown in all directions, yeah. You expect it to be very similar in the different buildings and that there would be a pattern there, and there is not. What you have are these very distinctive kinds of effects that seem to require a different explanation. So I think there are lots of reasons to raise questions. about these things, and I don't understand why they shouldn't all be perfectly legitimate subjects for investigation.
Building 7 is a huge smoking gun. And then during the second, Steve can talk about what happened to the Twin Towers, and I'll talk about what happened to the World Trade Center. Because the whole point of the research that Judy and Morgan have been doing, and why I've been so enthusiastic about it, is expanding our understanding of what it is we have to explain, which is known technically as the explanandum. They're showing us you can't just talk about the towers and claim to have explained what happened at the World Trade Center. Now there's a big difference between explaining the Twin Towers, or even the Twin Towers in Building 7, which is a special case, and explain what happened in the World Trade Center, because you got Building 3, 4, 5, and 6. So why does he say, why did the WTC buildings completely collapse? I said, let's have a session then where Steve talks about what happened in the Twin Towers, and I talk about what happened in the World Trade Center, and it become immediately obvious why I don't believe any longer that thermite is adequate, and why we have to look at more exotic, if you want, forms of demolition. But if we want to explain it, we're going to have to be faithful and be able to explain what actually happened. And I see it as about a 0 probability for these effects given thermite and thermate.
So yeah, that is Fetzer in the early days going on.
Well, I mean, Fetzer really, he likes the attention, so let's not give him too much attention. Fetzer's job really was to do, he's done a very good job because he just has to muddle things up. Yeah. He doesn't care about the truth. He doesn't want people to know the real truth. He just wants to put on a show, and he wants to start fights, and then when people try and criticize him or say, look, you, Mr. Fetzer, have some sort of connection to the people that did 9/11, right? He will just play the victim if you say anything like that to him, or even get close to saying things like that to him. His job, let me tell you a little story. Fetzer used to ring Dr. Judy Wood up in the middle of the night and shout abuse at her down the telephone, right? In the early days, like 2006, 2007. And when Dr. Wood and I discussed this, she realized that he had been given a profile. She'd been profiled, and so he was probably given this profile by the intelligence services that she would somehow be more easy to manipulate if he called her up in the middle of the night and did these abusive phone calls. Another thing as well, like for example, she, I think, I can't remember before or after the death of Dr. Michael Zieber, Michael Zieber, Dr. Judy Wood's student, she took off, Dr. Wood did, and she went to stay with Morgan Reynolds for a couple of nights because she was worried that her life was in danger. Within, I think, 3 or 4 hours of her not answering the phone, Fetzer filed a missing persons report on Dr. Judy Wood.
Okay, that's interesting.
So he was very concerned that he had to keep her in a place where he knew where she was and what she was doing. He tried to do the same with me, really. He invited me to join the scholars group, and he sucked up to me. He said that I had 2 degrees. Now, this is all in my books, by the way. Most of this is, some of it isn't. Some of the things I have said are not in my books. But then when I challenged him, particularly when we got onto the Hutchison Effect stuff later, and said that it was pretty clear that this is what it was, or something very like this, he said that I had no credibility, and my credentials didn't measure up to his, and I had to take this logic quiz. He asked me all these questions about what's the difference between inductive logic and deductive logic, which I still don't really know exactly. I know I've got a vague idea, but I thought, well, how's this relevant to the justification of the towers? And then he just kind of just blew. Once, in other words, once he knew he couldn't manipulate me, he had no interest in me anymore. He knew that, and he knew that I wasn't particularly important because I wasn't the one with the credentials. So he didn't care. And he, in other words, he's nice when he wants to get something, and he's abusive when he wants to be. There's no consistency. He's a very intelligent person. He's a very good speaker. I've said this before. He's a much better speaker than I was. He knows how to manipulate people. I wrote about other aspects of the way he manipulated people in my books as well. He manipulated people like Web Fairy, Peg Carter. I think he manipulated her. He manipulated Dr. Wood to an extent as well in the early days before she got wise to it. And we all kind of fell for him a bit before we were onto his game, and he's still doing it. Really, he's probably done the same to people like Joe Olson, for all I know, in some way.
It's strange because you'll see.
But the other thing he did, for example, he wrote this review of Where Did the Towers Go on Amazon. He gave it a 5-star review, and then he edited his review and he downgraded it to 3 stars.
Oh, he keeps on moaning about that all the time and all the abuse he's gotten, and no. But
so you get to the point where you've just got to ignore him and move on. And of course, I just got to the point where, well, anything that comes out of his mouth, it might be true, but I don't care, because the next thing that comes out of his mouth is probably going to not be true. So how can you even? They're just not reliable. You can't rely on them.
But
why would you want to talk to them?
As we saw in that clip, he was talking about all the weird and wonderful anomalies with 3, 4, 5, and 6. But now, if you ask him about Building 6, he'll say there was some sort of nuke. That was his spiel in his interview with Germ Warfare, I think 2 years ago, and I was in the live recording, being able to ask questions. And when I pressed Germ to ask Fetzer about Building 6, particularly with this clip that we watched in mind, he got all flustered and then said, "Oh, that must also be a nuke," and then went on this whole spiel of the gold that got. So he didn't even answer that.
When he was presenting. When he was sort of talking about Dr. Wood's research multiple times, this is back in 2007, 2008, he would always insert lasers, masers, and plasmoids. And Dr. Wood never said that. You probably heard him say that. I don't think he says that now.
The same what Jones also did. He's the initial guy that started the laser beams from space straw man.
Yeah, so it's all about controlling the narrative, whether that be the mainstream narrative or the alternative one. And that's essentially what the Scholars Group was for. That's what the Architecture and Engineers Group is for. And it sucks in some of these people. I still don't fully understand what these people like David Chandler think they're doing, and Joe Olson. I still don't know whether they've got dirt on them, or whether they're being paid money, or whether there's just something wrong with their brains. These people would actually be literally talking about something and as if it was true, and we know it can't be true, yet they insist that it is. But you can see quite clearly with a little bit of inspection of available evidence that it cannot be true, yet they still persist. I mean, Gage is one of the worst people, and I think he's like an android, Gage. I think he must be some sort of reprogrammable android. Fetzer's a bit different. I wouldn't class Fetzer as like an android. He's just I don't know what Fetzer is, but he there's something inhuman about these people, all their brains. I really, that's about the kindest way I can put it. And so the Scholars Group basically broke apart when Fetzer and Jones started having food fights. There is this podcast that was done, I think, in 2007, where they're really going at it with each other, and Jones actually sounds a little bit nervous. He sounds like he's a little bit scared. It's really, really quite odd. And then once they got to that point, I think that's when I was just talking to Dr. Judy and not so much Morgan Reynolds. He was doing his own thing to some extent, and I mean Dr. Judy, she was working much more on her own than Dr. Morgan Reynolds was, because Morgan Reynolds had got a webmaster and things. I was sort of a bit of a webmaster for drjudywood.com. I must say, actually, by the way, if anybody listening to this goes to the drjudywood.com website, they will find it doesn't work, because there's another little story now which actually sort of ties in with this Fetzer thing and Jones. Round about that time, 2006, 2007, was when we first set up the Dr. Judy Wood website. I think it was 2006. And I think another chap that we knew then, he was probably on this email list at least some of the time, the one that I mentioned earlier. I only know him as James. I can't remember his second name. He bought the Dr. Judy Wood domain name, right? Now I bought the web space. So James had the domain name, and I had the web space, and I just set up the name service for it. So he had the domain name, and then I think he paid for it for 2 or 3 years or something, and then we got to, like, I don't know, 2008 or something, or 2009, and the website domain expired, and we said, oh, James, you know, can we get it off you? Can we get this domain name off you so we can and he didn't reply, as I recall, and he just renewed it. And he must have been renewing it ever since 2009 or 2007. So, and of course now we're here, you know, sort of whatever, 14, 15 years later, and the domain name literally has just expired. I think expired on the 20th of November. We're speaking on the 28th now. And I don't have an email address for him. And he was a bit of a mysterious character, this James. He seemed okay, but we didn't know a lot about his background. He did give me his business card, because I met him. I met him in Washington, D.C. in 2008 when I went to see Frank Ferguson. And we had a coffee with him somewhere, and I sort of remember his face. He was younger than me, but I can't remember anything else about him, or even if I've still got this business card. And even then, that was like 17 years ago, so it's still going to be valid contact details. Who knows? So we're just going to have to wait initially to see if this domain name gets renewed. You know, I've got another domain name, which is the full drjudywood.com. But of course, a lot of the links and everything are all assigned to that one. So we'll just have to see. I mean, I don't know what's happened to the guy. I'll have to go and dig up an email address for him, see if I can find him.
I hope you can.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a shame, but there's not much we can do. And you know, we kind of just left it because he's always renewed it, you know. And I did ask if we could buy it off him, but he didn't reply. So I don't know, maybe we should have been a bit more persistent. But you know how it is with these things, that go on the same for years and years. Anyway, so that was that. So then we got to the Architects and Engineers group. Fetzer said in 2007, January, to Dr. Judy Wood, do you think 9/11 was a cold fusion event? And that was before we knew about Jones's history. So Fetzer knew there was some sort of connection. He was testing how far down the line Dr. Judy Wood had got. We weren't quite there with that. We hadn't quite established the connection to cold fusion. So yeah, so that's up to. And then once we'd had all the scholars group and stuff, it was in 2009 that I published the first edition of 9/11 Finding the Truth. So that's what kind of all that malarkey was what motivated me to publish 9/11 Finding the Truth, and I put a bit about Gage in the first edition, and then added a bit more by the third edition and stuff.
There's also an interview that Dr. Wood was busy with, and then Fetzer phoned in and kind of like attacked her again. Right. And Dr. Wood really didn't want to speak to him because at that stage in the interview she said she hasn't had any contact with him for 3 years, and then stated no, but it's because Fetzer threatened her. Can you expand on that?
I can. So what happened then was it was really sort of from November 2007, that was when Dr. Wood published the first page about 9/11 and the Hutchison Effect. And what she told me was, because we knew that was it, you know, that was close to what it was. We were pretty sure from all the evidence that it was some sort of interference effect, and that's what John Hutchison was doing. So she showed him this page. She rang him up and says, "Oh, Jim, I've got this new page to show you. We'd worked on it for, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks or something, and we just put it online. And I'd written this little summary, and Judy had done all the other stuff. And she rang him and said, "Oh, I've got a new series of pages to show you, Jim." And she says, "Oh, right, I'll just go down to my basement. I'll get a cup of coffee, and I'll go down to my basement." He goes down to his basement, switches his computer on. She sends him the link, and he opens the page, looks at it, and he says, I've just got to call somebody. Hangs up the phone. So he knew. He knew at that point. He knew that we knew, right? Now, obviously, I can't prove that, but that's what it looked like. So from that point on, that's when he became more hostile, openly hostile. And then I forget the exact date, but what he said was, the threat was, I think it would have been sometime in 2007. He said something like, if she didn't dissociate from John Hutchison, she would not be able to maintain her credibility. And that's when he started on the offensive, saying, oh, you know, and Fetzer even sent around emails to this group of people saying that Judy Wood and John Hutchison were having sex.
So that must have been after the Madison.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
thing.
it was. So that would have been. It would have been 2008. I think that was going on, because Madison was August. There was no Hutchison Effect in the Madison conference. That wasn't there then, and it was November when that came into the picture. And Fetzer did that conference, and the filming was rubbish. That video clip that you showed of Fetzer, and it said Madison on it a few minutes ago, whenever it was, I put that caption on because that was my video, because he produced these DVDs and they were crap. The filming, all the pictures were blurry, and it was just a video camera pointing at the screen. And I thought, no, you can't have that. And the audio was a hiss on it. It was awful. And so what I did was I got this DVD, and it was filmed by this guy called Joe Friendly, I think was his name. And it was okay, but it was fairly rubbish. Fetzer hadn't made an effort to make it look presentable. So I got Dr. Wood's PowerPoint, and I put in all the slides and made them really clear, and I filtered the audio to get rid of all the hiss and all that. And then I reissued that, and I did a little bit of editing. And so that was the Madison conference. And yeah, you're right, Fetzer was bigging her up and saying she's the greatest thing since sliced bread and all of that. But that Madison conference, most of the people that were there were spooks. I
went through it in detail with Dr. Morgan Reynolds, and people can go look at our chat, because there was a question and answer, especially with Morgan Reynolds, because you had Kevin Barrett there, Dave Von Kleist, Barbara Honegger, all the
fake
guys that are
truthers,
still sitting in the weekly what do you call it, safe spaces of these thermite guys, the guys who are controlling the narrative, so that they can be there and just circumvent anybody who basically tries to bring up something. And we'll get into that in a bit later. Now, I want to quickly play. Okay, so that was 2008, and then with Hutchison, and then a little bit later, Fetzer did a conference in Toronto, Canada, and also Vancouver, Canada, and then Gage as well. But that was whilst the Smith-Mundt Act was still in in place. So let's just quickly listen to what Dr. Wood had to say with regards to that. So let's share my screen and bring that over.
When I was being accused of being
let's just bring this. Come on. Why doesn't this thing move? And let's listen.
A government shill or plant and promoting disinformation. One of the things that shelters me or saves me from that's verifiable, is that in my RFC, that's the request for corrections to NIST, I stated what I talk about. Energy weapons, and this, the building was justified and so forth. And if I was a government shill, I'm forbidden from putting that in the government report, because that would be treason. I could be charged with treason. Now, at the same time, let's look at the thermite story. Their RFC, which came about a month after mine, did not contain any mention of their so-called thermite evidence or molten metal. And, why would they go to the trouble of filing a request for correction to NIST and not include their claim to fame of thermite? With the Smith-Mundt Act, it really, it defends me and it incriminates others.
Yeah.
But, that's why I think they're trying to take it off the books. And it also led me to, when Morgan Reynolds told me that they were working at putting it through Congress to take it off the books or to render it useless, that you kind of wonder, where things are going. But then someone posted somewhere that, I guess that's why Fetzer and Gage each had their, quote, hearings just outside the country line in Canada. Toronto and Vancouver.
My gosh.
They could do their propaganda in Vancouver.
Is that why they're having the conference in Vancouver?
That's what it seems like. And when somebody posted that, Fetzer posted right after that with one of his distracting rants, is totally ignoring that, trying to distract it. Well, I've had Judy on my show X number of times. I gave her unprecedented this. His normal spiel he does.
Sure. Huh.
Go ahead.
Good day, Mr. Fetzer. Can you hear me?
Okay, so this is now one of the 9/11 truther groups in America that have speakers on every 2 weeks. They basically entertain anybody, anything. You can talk about glow-in-the-dark mushrooms took down the towers and they'll have them on, but they refuse to have me on. They regularly kick me off. Ryan from Field Interference, they don't like him either because Ryan really ripped into Fetzer here as well. And then also, you can't mention anything about no planes. Mark Conlon actually told me that they reached out to him to have a conversation with him. So we'll see if that happens. And strangely enough, even Germ Warfare uploaded his first talk with Mark Conlon onto YouTube, and that lasted for 30 minutes on YouTube before they took it down and gave him a strike. So let's listen to how Fetzer handled me asking him questions, and then people can decide whether or not this guy is a good guy or not.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you'd agree with me that disseminating propaganda in the US should be made illegal again, correct?
The trouble is, what's propaganda? You got to know the difference between the truth and the false.
Okay, so
you got to have.
let me remind you. Okay,
you have to have.
Let me remind you of the 1948 Smith-Mundt Act. Obama repealed it in 2012, which then permitted propaganda to be disseminated in broadcasting. Disseminating information then no longer said that it had to be credible. Now, I've seen on many discussions, forums, platforms, and everywhere where people talk about the Smith-Mundt Act being in effect, but prior to 2012, before it was repealed, you and Richard Gage held your 9/11 hearings in Vancouver and Toronto, Canada. So the suggestion has been made that you and Richard Gage could have been charged with treason for disseminating propaganda, especially taking into consideration that the thermite, molten metal, and nukes have never been filed in an RFC to NIST, or this claimed explosive evidence has ever been taken to court. So could you please address the reasons for holding your 9/11 hearings in Canada whilst the Smith-Mundt Act was still in play? And when will you file your explosive nuke evidence to NIST or take it to court?
Come on. I thought this is a serious group. Look, I just organized it in Vancouver. It's a beautiful location. And we had the hearings there. I don't think at the time I was even aware of the Smith-Mundt Act, much less the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which hadn't been passed yet, just in time for Sandy Hook. That was really to give cover to the crisis actors who'd bring a Sandy Hook and a host of others. But I think you're making an extraordinarily contrived argument here. I don't find this a serious piece of exchange here. Thank you. Just ridiculous.
Last question. Then.
I have published my work. I have widely announced it. I've been flown around the world to give lectures on 9/11, and I'm not going to stop.
I've got another question. I don't want to hear how important you are in the 9/11 space, because a lot of people have pointed out your shortcomings, especially with.
Well, talk to my wife. Talk to my wife. She'll give you an expand.
Norman, your next question. You have 1 minute left.
Okay, so I would like you to then explain with your nuke theory the lack of seismic readings, the undamaged bathtub, and the anomalies with buildings 3, 4, 5, and 6 that cannot be explained due to thermal or kinetic mechanisms. Also taking into account the strange anomalies with 1,400 cars that were basically spontaneously combusting blocks away where the engines melted away and all of that kind of aspects. And then also the missing firemen who just disappeared, but their locator alarms were still found.
So, yeah.
Yes, so Fetzer, you see, it's pointless really asking Fetzer or anything like that, because he isn't going to turn around and say, yeah, okay, you've got me. I've been lying all these years. I've been working for the CIA all along. You know, I've been getting £10,000, a week in compensation for doing the work that I do. He's not going to say anything like that. He is not fully human. The guy is evil. So, you're better off spending your time really, I don't know, doing another Substack post or something and going through the evidence. You did the right thing in presenting the evidence to him, but that's been done 10,000 times in the last 15 years, and there is, it's like the first sign of madness is doing the same thing, 3 times in a row and expecting a different outcome. You get to that point with Fetzer, and I got to that point with him after 18 months, a couple of years, I think. Morgan kind of hung on a bit longer. Morgan was still holding out for Fetzer, but Dr. Judy Wood and I gave up on him and just thought, this guy, there is something seriously wrong with this guy. Is he even human? Maybe he's a lizard person or something. I don't know.
When did he start with his nuke drivel?
Well, it doesn't really matter when he started with it, as long as he didn't talk. He could have talked about magic mushrooms, like you were saying, or whatever the expression. It didn't really matter whether it was nukes or not. He switched. I think there was something that he got involved with Gordon Duff and the veterans today.
They actually got a clip that I've already got queued up that I want to play.
I think it was around that time that Fetzer just started getting into this nuke thing. I don't really know why. I didn't really care why, to be honest, because he's just been playing the same stock record. He's changed the lyrics slightly, but it's basically the same tune. He's been doing that since the point which we talked about, which would have been November 2007. That was the point that he knew that we knew, and then from then on, he could do, anything but. And there was Frank Ferguson, he put it well. You can say whatever you like in these 9/11 echo chambers, truth echo chambers, such as you've described. You can say anything as long as it is not directed energy weapons and the Hutchison Effect and Hurricane Erin. Particularly those two, Hurricane Erin, Hutchison Effect, no one talks about them. No one talks about them, right? They still don't. Yeah. And we've been talking about them since 2008.
So seeing that we touched on Gordon Duff now, Gordon Duff is the senior editor of Veterans Today. Gordon Duff is on record stating that
they 40%, put out disinformation.
40% of the information on their website is disinformation. For him to stay alive type of aspect and all of that. And he's the proponent of nukes as well. They've got a lot of disinformation on their website with regards to that. And then this Joe Olson guy jumps onto the thing saying
there's been many. There's been many. There's Joe Olson, there's Ed Ward, started it in 2008. Then there was Jeff Prager. He did this enormous publication all about nukes and 9/11. I think Fetzer climbed on board with that. This Jeff Prager guy, he was wanted by police.
The Russian guy, and then
that's right. They had the 16 hours to Dmitry Karlazov.
I wish I could have my 10 hours back.
Yeah, whatever it was, 16 or 10 hours. Where that came from, I do not know. That guy's a total liar. He said that I agreed with him or something about something. He just lied to somebody else that wrote to him. It's a flat out lie, and that's what these people are. They're like the flat earthers. They just lie, They're not going to say, oh, actually, Andrew, Actually, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You have that does prove that what I've said was wrong. They never say that. There's just something wrong with them. They're not on a spiritual pathway. They're not on a, they're not trying to learn things. They're not trying to grow as people. They want to stay where they are and drag everyone else back with them into their little dark hole, or whatever it is. That's all they're interested in.
So let's listen to what Gordon Duff had to say to Pete and Tilly about Dr. Wood, because, again, this is a guy that says something on a call that he doesn't know is being recorded, but when he's in public, he sings a completely...
You're bringing a knife to a gunfight, I think he says, or something, doesn't he?
Something in that line. So let's just share again. And let's bring this over here. Where is that clip? There it is.
So nanotechnology is a big deal. The issue with nanotechnology is are the processes and the processes for nanotechnology that we have used, that were being used at Sandia Labs by Stephen Jones and others, are very rudimentary. The people I worked with and knew him for years, and he always knew nanothermite never existed.
Stephen Jones?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are all diversionary things. I mean, obviously...
He knew it never existed. Guys I worked with have known him for years. He was a respected physicist at Sandia Labs. He didn't work on the project, but it was not a big secret that it was an ISS project, and that nanothermite tests at Sandia had totally failed. And he knew this from day number one.
He did.
What does that tell you about him? And then, what would Judy Wood have to say about him?
She would have a lot to say. I couldn't. I would let her speak for herself, of course, but she has a lot to say about Stephen Jones. Yeah.
And that he works for the Defense Intelligence Agency?
I don't think I've ever heard that. No.
Oh, okay.
How about Richard Gage?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Yeah. So the worst thing Judy has is Judy has ended up right, but she just doesn't pay attention when people actually tell her she's right. She's too busy defending herself, hypervigilance, what I was saying. Right now, she's in better shape than she's ever been.
Oh, yeah. And about to be in even better shape, yeah.
Relax, take on some confidence. Hey, time has proven her right.
Yeah.
She's fucking won. She's the last man standing.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah. So she's won. That's the whole fucking point. She's won. Hey, you won. Okay? Fucking learn to win and take it well. Okay? You guys were fucking right. Okay?
Well, let's play another match. This game's not over.
Yeah. The whole fucking point is, Pete, say you were right. She was right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Point well made.
Okay, so just before we jump over to Alex Jones and all of those guys, I just quickly want to play a last little clip, because this year Fetzer and Richard Gage had a mock debate, and they were talking about thermite versus nukes, planes versus no planes, and all of that. And I was really surprised on this. They had the debate on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday I was listening to the recording, and I was really surprised to see what happened. Let's just quickly show you guys what happened.
Yes, and none of my work comes from me. I bring together the best experts to establish what actually happened. People are competent in areas where I am not. I have the modesty to know I don't know everything. So I bring in people like aeronautical engineers to help me, physicists, structural, mechanical, electrical. That's how I proceed. And I'm sorry to say, there are other groups that are far less scientific and objective than his scholars for 9/11 truth. Indeed, there's an enormous amount of research on the plane, no plane phenomenon. Here's from a piece by 9/11 Revisionist published in 2023. Once upon a time, there were 210 steel-framed steel core towers. Today, they're not there anymore. Nearly 22 years ago, each one of these 110-story towers were supposedly hit by a plane. We saw it on TV, so it must be true. Yes, and none of.
So I was really surprised to see that happen because I took him on around about a month or so prior to that, the fast debate that they had going on, and for him to bring that in, and strangely enough, Matthew Estepo from Canada, Math Easy Solutions, and they were going on about this whole nose out aspect of the plane, and they actually used one of his videos, and strangely enough, Gage used the first half of the video and Fetzer used the second half of the video, and they didn't give Matthew any credit for that. They just mentioned, I can't remember where we got this, because that was part of a whole email thread. And in my article on Substack, where I break this down, we've got Matthew's feedback there as well. But again, that just shows you how Fetzer states he doesn't do his own research. He basically co-ops a bunch of people's stuff. And even now, if you ask him about the nuke stuff, he refers you to go speak to this Joe Olson guy who's got absolutely no credentials when it comes to stuff like this. And it's really, really infuriating, this gaslighting that
But you see, what that's all for, Norman, is for anybody looking from the outside, let's just say from a mainstream university, or a mainstream sort of journalistic publication, they're just going to see all these food fights, It's just going to completely turn them off. They're going to think, I don't want to get involved with any of this crap. These people are crazy, And that's all it's for. If they can generate a whole cloud of that, which goes all around the internet, and or generates lots of search results, it's job done. And whether they use one of your videos, one of Mark's videos, Matthew's videos, one of my videos, they don't really care. As long as they keep this cloud there, this smoke screen, and all this muddle up, that's what it's for. Yeah. So, and you inadvertently end up contributing to that, and because, for example, we didn't create conflict, but because we were, people said,
they were wrong.
Yeah, I know, but from the outside, you see, that still looks like arguments, and people don't want to get involved with these people that are nuts, and so that it's all part and parcel of that, and that's why they have to keep it going. That's why Gage and Fetzer will get together and seemingly have some sort of conversation, but really it's just all for show, or all for not even for show. It's all for hiding. Yeah. It's for hiding the evidence. We see, if they really wanted to, get people to know the truth, we know what the truth is. They would just present it. But it's clear that their job is to keep it covered up for as long as possible, and it's been very successful. Yeah. And I go through all of that in my books, all the psychology, and it's still ongoing. And although we want to try and address it and correct it, you're just outnumbered really and outgunned, because they've got more time, they've got more money, they've got people that they can just bring in. I mean, that is Joe Olson guy. I don't know when he came on the scene. He's come on the scene in the last 5 years, I think. Yeah. And I could probably name another 20 people like him that have come and gone. Yeah. In before he was Jeff Prager is one. He's history now. He created a lot of noise, shall we say?
And Joseph Farrell.
He's not really a 9/11 guy, but he was involved in editing the Where Did the Towers Go book that then didn't want to be named. I've written about him. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't create food fights. He just tells stories. Yeah. So his role is slightly different. He tells lots of stories, some of which seem fantastic, some of which are more believable. Mm-hmm. So anybody on the outside looking at Joseph Farrell will think, Yeah, but some of his stories, they're all right. But if he says that 9/11 was a directed energy weapon, that might be true. But it might probably just a story, because that's what his other stories are like. So he kind of fits into that role. Really, is my take on that.
Now, Alex Jones, he was also involved with the 9/11 Truth Movement. 2006, we had the C-SPAN event with Fetzer talking about the no planes, and Alex Jones was there, and all of these things. You ended up having Jesse Ventura doing his series on 9/11. He went through the thermite bomb story. Then a NASA guy dropped down Dr. Wood's book in front of him while he was doing a book signing tour. And we went onto Alex Jones's show and pretty much wiped the floor with Alex when he wanted to talk about molten metal and nukes and all of this kind of stuff. And ever since then, Alex Jones has been refusing to have Dr. Wood on when anybody mentions that. And I want to play a short little clip now from 2019 when Alex Jones was with Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan. And Eddie Bravo and Eddie Bravo brought up Dr. Wood. And then I posted this under, I can't remember where, under one of the Tucker Carlson series stuff, mentioning that he's showing Ed's behavior, meaning that if there's something that gets somebody uncomfortable or whatever, they'll change the subject, they'll go up into high and low energy levels and all of that, and he tries to steer the conversation away. And he then ended up commenting under my video on X, stating he's had Dr. Wood on his show, and nothing that he's seen so far proves directed energy weapons. So even in 2025, he's still lying. And so a lot of this episode of Joe Rogan isn't available on YouTube anymore. You can only find it on Spotify, as far as I know. And it's around about the 4-hour mark. I can't remember. Let's just see if I've got the episode number. No, I haven't got the episode number. But let's quickly just listen to this short little clip and see how Alex Jones freaks out when Dr. Wood's name gets mentioned. And here's the video.
You know who Dr. Judy Wood is?
No, I do know.
She's got Dr. Judy Wood wrote a book called Where Did the Towers Go?
Yeah, particle.
And her theory is this is just some scientist lady.
No, I know. She said it was a federal agent.
Based on the fact that there was, this is what she claims, based on the video
and Fetzer
and the pictures that she has of where the towers collapsed.
By the way, I'm tired of Fetzer speaking for me. Sorry.
She's saying that there was no rubble. The name of the book is called Where Did the Towers Go? She said that direct energy weapons, some kind of direct energy weapons, dustified the buildings, turned the buildings to dust because there was no rubble.
A dude gave me a book on that.
Have you seen that?
You got to read this. He's like,
in Australia? In Australia?
No, he's in America. He was in LA. He told me they use Tesla technology. I was like, what?
I'm not saying you're wrong to ask that question.
You know what? For me, it doesn't matter if it was justified or they blew them up Las Vegas style.
It doesn't matter.
Here's those buildings, in my opinion,
in Sandy Hook and in the World Trade Centers, I've been accused of covering up, and I don't like that.
You mean what?
He's been accused of covering things up, of being a bullshitter.
No, like I'm covering up. Like, Jones
Jones
says 9/11.
A lot of people think you're a Zionist.
Hologram planes.
A lot of people think you're a Zionist shill. You know that. That's the biggest one. That's the biggest one about Alex Jones.
I'll be honest with you.
That's the biggest one. People always, and you know what? I always have your back. Always. I said, you know what? If I didn't know him.
So we know now that Eddie Bravo has got Dr. Wood's book. We know Alex Jones knows her work well. Joe Rogan's got a book. Eddie Bravo never had her on his show. He ended up having Richard Gage on a year later. Joe Rogan has never had Dr. Wood on. So what the hell is it with these big name podcast celebrities that are too scared to go there because I want to go into Tucker Carlson and then this new up-and-coming CIX Navy SEAL Shawn Ryan that's had the Colonel John Alexander on talking about all these exotic weaponry and the Hutchison Effect and all of that. But they are all running this line. Tucker's had a hell of a lot of CIA guys on touting the government narrative. Shawn Ryan as well. He recently had guys on stating that they were there and they shot Osama, but their testimony with regards to what happened and how Osama looked when they shot him and what they write in the book and what they say in the interviews, two different things. So why are all these big names talking about the technology, but when it comes to Dr. Wood, none of them will have her on? Because I've been writing them.
Yeah. Well, it's been the same forever, Norman. I mean, we had high hopes of getting Dr. Wood on various big podcasts before Joe Rogan was even, the star podcaster that he is now. So when you get to the level of your Joe Rogans and your Tucker Carlsons, I think it becomes more complicated in terms of how you get people on because they work with a team. Joe Rogan will have a producer. Tucker Carlson will have a producer. Clearly, Patrick Bet-David has a producer. And when Dr. Wood got invited onto Patrick Bet-David, I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I
thought so
too. I made the wrong assumption that Patrick Bet-David was an honest guy and he was going to give it honest coverage. How wrong we were, And I think it's the same sort of thing is applying to Tucker Carlson and to Joe Rogan. They have a producer. The producer might know somebody who knows somebody who gives them advice on guests or does background checks or something. I don't know what it is. And they will say, no, you don't want to have her on because she's not a very good speaker, or she's not this, or she's not that, or she is this, she is that. They'll have all these excuses, and they won't get Dr. Wood on, And I think it's almost like the world is not ready for it yet. That's almost the conclusion that I've come to. That because we've got all these people who are supposedly good people, and they seem to be good people in many other ways, but they will not be a platform for this information either with Dr. Wood or without her. They will not accurately present this evidence. It just won't. It's just not happening, and it doesn't happen. We've never had. I mean, the closest. I think one of the closest we came to was Stu Phillips. He did a pretty good job because he had a large audience, and I was very surprised when he invited me on, and he invited me on the following year as well.
Yeah, if I can interject with Stu Peters, I was really happy that happened because I was bombing him in his comment sections the whole time, and then he ended up reaching out to me, thinking I'm you because I've been sharing videos about you on his X, and then I gave him your email address, and he had you on twice. And in 2024, he was there with Ken O'Keefe, and even when Stu Peters did his Occupy documentary, and just prior to that, Ken O'Keefe was on another podcast with a guy in the UK, and I took a clip out of that because in that clip he was talking about directed energy weapons. In the Occupied story, he didn't really even bring that in, and I was really surprised that Stu Peters also didn't do that. So then I slapped a little bit of an edit together, private messaged that to Ken O'Keefe. He okayed it and said he loves Dr. Wood, and that's one of the stuff that I keep on sending out as soon, because this is one of my pet peeves, is this comment, the Jews did it. Okay, so what exactly is it that they did?
They did.
So most of these black-pilled, everything is the Jews' fault and we can't do anything about it. It's such a defeatist position to be in, and it's such a distraction from the enemy domestic in America. and the role the US military played, that it just completely and utterly infuriates me. And the crazy thing is, when you tell a person, but dude, your perception is being managed away from the perpetrators, the guys who immediately started with a cover-up as soon as the dust settled on September 13, with ARA and SIAC being in control of the site and everything that gets sent out to the people. Then all of a sudden the people say, oh, you're either a Jewish sympathizer or you're a Jew. Dude, I'm a South African Afrikaner boer, klonkie. Do I look Jewish? Do I sound Jewish? It's so infuriating. It's stupid how some of these people just can't think. And how do you counter something like that with somebody that's just so closed off?
Yeah, I don't think that, it's, again, you get back to this situation where really people have got to be curious. If they haven't got that curiosity, then they're not going to engage with you. They've got to be curious about something for you to be able to, they've got to go into a mode where they ask you questions. If you try and lay things on them, it doesn't usually work, and that's the problem. And when they've got a record of dishonesty or limited hangouts, it's really, you're really going to have it's going to be a big surprise if they move away from that. We've had very few people who have actually said, oh, I'm sorry that I covered this up. You were right and I was wrong. I've had very few instances of that over the years. People will stick. It's like I've said before, when people that have never questioned the official story of 9/11 get to read Dr. Wood's book, they tend to pick it up more quickly and get into it more easily than if they've been via the thermite or another route, because they haven't had that intermediate step where they've had to unlearn the official narrative and then learn the official conspiracy theory and then unlearn the official conspiracy theory and learn the truth. There's not going from the official from the official story to the truth. It's a lot easier. Yeah,
but the thing is, it's like a lot of people ended up watching September Clues or In Plain Sight or Loose Change or something, and they just got stuck there. And also, even till now, I still get a lot of people that also reference back to Rebecca's Roth stuff, and then also Ace Baker. And Ace Baker was a close friend in a way with Dr. Morgan Reynolds and Dr. Wood. He was at one of the seminars. They stayed over at Jerry Leiphardt's house. And then he ended up doing that American Psy opera, where that was one hell of a muddle up. And people still stuck there. And even a couple of months ago, there was this huge email thread. I can't remember how it happened or whatever, but then Ace Baker also jumped in and he kept on going on as if he's the Messiah and he's the only one that's been right. But he's been proven wrong by how many people? And we said, oh, you must be the Messiah because you've risen from the dead.
Again, he was another one. He was working closely with Fetzer to manage the no planes issue, and that the early days of that are in my book. And Ace Baker said, for example, that he'd been receiving hate mail from Andrew Johnson. I never sent him hate mail. What he was referring to was another message that was on the same email thread that I was in with Ace Baker and with Fetzer from another guy. And he sent him a not very kind message, but I didn't send it. But that he expanded the definition of Andrew Johnson to mean the group, this email group. I didn't send him the message. And Fetzer didn't correct him. Fetzer knew who had sent this email, but he didn't correct him. And that's, that was in my book. So when that was the real crunch point for me, because if they lied about who sent an email, why should they? And they had all that evidence in front of them. Why would they tell the truth about 9/11 when they were lying about who sent an email? why they're going to tell the truth about 9/11. And I asked them to apologise on air to say that I didn't send them hate mail. It wasn't me that sent that. And they refused to apologise. They refused to acknowledge their error. And it was a simple, basic error. And that's when I realised, well, there's no point in talking to these people. If they can't just say, oh, sorry, yeah, it wasn't Andrew who sent this email, it was somebody else. When they refused to do that, right? And then Fetzer said that I demanded. Fetzer said that I demanded that they give me an apology. I didn't. I asked them to give me an apology. I didn't demand it. Fetzer lied again, and that was about a basic, one-to-one interaction with somebody. I thought, look, if you're going to behave like that, that means you're untruthful. That means you're dishonest, and I don't want to know you. Sorry, bye. And that was really and that's all in my book, the detail of all of that and the messages and everything. And Ace Baker was part of that group. He did exactly the same. So he was just as bad as Fetzer was. And then he tried to produce these debunking videos. He spent quite a bit of time. And then he went on a mission to debunk John Hutchison. And he said there was no Hutchison effect. And that was his point. He wouldn't see anything different to that. He was on a mission to debunk John Hutchison's videos, saying, and he'd got a Tesla coil, and he'd got a video camera, he'd reproduced the experiments, and he posted all these videos. It must have taken him hours. Yet he was supposed to be trying to find out the truth of 9/11, not whether John Hutchison was a fraud or not. And I said to him, so, okay, Ace, if John Hutchison's a fraud, and it's not to do with the Hutchison effect, what is it then? What's your conclusion? What research have you done to show what it actually is if you know it isn't anything to do with the Hutchison effect? And he had no answer for that because he wasn't interested in what the truth was. He was only interested in covering it up, right? For whatever the underlying reason, we can speculate about that, whether he's another android, whether he's been paid, £1 million, whether he's been mind controlled, whether he's been brainwashed. I don't know, But the point is, he wasn't interested in the truth. He was only interested in covering it up. And this is what's so hard to believe. Not only is it tough to take on the directed energy weapon evidence if you're new to it, it's totally alien. It's totally. Not only that, but you cannot believe that these people like Gage, Olson, Fetzer, Ace Baker, which is not his real name apparently, that's apparently an assumed identity. You can't. They're everywhere. These people. You can't believe that there's that many of them.
Yeah.
So the cover-up, runs itself almost with a bit of help from them, because you just get into this sort of weird realm of these strange people who don't behave like humans, or they don't behave with any kind of civilized decency. They don't answer basic questions. They avoid basic questions. They avoid evidence. They avoid apologizing for simple things. It's just astonishing.
But there was a challenge for the replication of the Hutchison effect, or Ace Baker bet Hutchison $100,000 or something.
That's right.
And then Hutchison
That's correct.
It and everything, and Ace Baker never showed up. And never mind with regards to the Hutchison effect, there's so many samples that's been sent all over the world. There's a on the Martin Fleischmann project YouTube channel, there are a playlist of 300 videos where they're going through the samples. Bob Green had a great conversation with you a whilst ago, where he was going through the Navy patent, how he got into Dr. Wood's work from a physics standpoint. I've even got a clip here ready for you that I would like to play later with regards to this Jonathan Cole and his Where the Towers Went half-assed attack on Dr. Wood at the DC event, and then he presented to this other group as well, and we asked him questions there, and Bob Green had jumped in there as well. But I want to just quickly jump back to just get into my groove of things. Do you know, you obviously know in the whole COVID, are you following the COVID research and all of that with Denis Rancourt at all?
I come across a little bit of that. Denis Rancourt goes back a long way.
Yeah.
He came onto my radar probably in about
2010.
Yeah, sometime around then, I would say. Yeah, and so he was made aware, I think, of Dr. Wood's research around then, But he just poo-pooed the whole 9/11 truth scene, as I recall.
Yeah,
I think he was one of these people. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, because you might have better memory of this. But he was one of these people. I think he knew the official story was wrong, but then he wouldn't study the evidence of why it was wrong. Yeah, he wouldn't. He did
a great debunk of the thermite paper in 2010. Yes. He even debated Harrod for 2 hours. I've got that in the article that I wrote about him.
Okay.
And then in 2020, you've got Kevin Barrett. He runs a website with another guy. We'll see the guy's name now. But they have a yearly debate, 9/11 debate on Einstein's birthday for the last couple of years. And they've never had you on. They've never had Dr. Wood on. They've never had Morgan on. So this is a debate where Denis Rancourt was on in 2020, and they were talking about thermite. It's just strange that Denis Rancourt, even till today, because I've been hammering him, I've been going into his Substack and all of that, to challenge him with regards to, especially now Bob Greenyer that did his presentation proving that the thermite dust study is complete and utter bull. So let's just listen to what Denis Rancourt had to say. Let's play that. Am I sharing now or not? Share, play.
Said, well, they found nanothermite. Well, no, they didn't. You know, if you read that paper, and I've criticized it as I would act as a reviewer for a material science paper, because I am a material scientist, and I've stated and explained why there is absolutely no reliable evidence of nanothermite presence in that dust based on the data that was reported in that paper. That is a paper that reviewers should have caught as just being untenable, that much more work was needed. And one of the main, just to give you one example of one of the fatal flaws in the paper, they analyzed for aluminum by putting dust on an aluminum holder, a pellet. You need a conducting pellet when you do these measurements in electron microanalysis. Well, they put a little bit of dust on an aluminum slug. You're always going to get an aluminum signal from that. There's no way to avoid it. And that's what they did. And when I pointed this out, they said, yeah, we know, but we're going to do it. We're going to do the measurements again on a different slug, on a non-aluminum slug. I said, great, send me the results when you get them. They never did it. So, you know, if you were to use one word regarding the results of that paper, it would be unreliable. And I'm being polite, okay? No, none of the people, the first author of the paper is not even a material scientist. He'd never used these characterization methods before. I taught these characterization methods at the graduate level at university for years. I know exactly what the artifacts are. They did all the things you should never do, and then they concluded something which you couldn't conclude based on their data, and then it became what everyone's talking about. So it's just not reliable at all. There's no evidence of nanothermite presence at all in the dust from that paper. Now, if in the recent year or two they redid the measurements and they published it, I didn't see it, well, that's something else. But the paper that everyone is citing and talking about, and that was even reviewed in the European Journal of Association Journal recently, a couple years ago, it's a nonsense paper. I'm sorry, but it's wrong. And it normally would not have been published. Now, I'm fine with people publishing things on the internet and having it critiqued openly and so on, but normally using rigorous peer review, that paper would not have been published. In fact, 2 editors-in-chief of that publication resigned over that paper, 2 in a row. So, yeah, no, you can't say there was nanothermite there, in my opinion.
And then,
I mean, it's all very well, you see, putting stuff up like that, and the same, Bob Greenyer's done the same. You can debunk thermite, 1,000 times over in different ways. And, we knew that. I mean, that that he made a sort of backhanded reference there, Denis Rancourt. It was published in a vanity journal, that original paper. It wasn't a real scientific journal. It's one of these ones where it gives the appearance of being a scientific journal, but it isn't. It was the Open Chemical Journal or something, and you pay like $750, and you send your paper to these reviewers, and then they'll sort of give it the nod, and then they publish it in this journal. I don't know who reads this journal, but it's a vanity journal. It's not a real journal. And Denis Rancourt's rightly saying that, and the criticism is valid. But the thing is, it's fine to say what it wasn't. So what was it then, Denis? Why don't you talk about that more? What I just said about Ace Baker? He's not a scientist, but it's the same point. And I believe Rancourt was sent a book, or we offered to send him a book or something. I know there was some conversation that was had with him, but he just remained just kept his head down, didn't want to get involved. And I'd forgotten that he was a material scientist. I thought he was some. I didn't realise he was I thought he was like a psychologist or something. So that's refreshed my memory.
Yeah, and he also in my article, because I first wrote the article about Bob Greenyer taking on the thermite, and then an article on Denis Rancourt and his history, and then Denis Rancourt got thrown out of the schools out of the university because he was using a different method of marking or giving kids a mark for the year. So that's the issue. So he's already not a guy that follows the flow, but even interacting with him on X and on his Substack, why he doesn't want to go there or give an opinion on Dr. Wood's work is really, really saddening in a way, because he sees through the thermite, but he still wants to stick to the government narrative.
You look at somebody like him, who's sort of rubbed up against the system, and he's made a rod for his own back, so to speak. But yet he still won't go that extra mile or that extra 5 miles. He doesn't want to know, and that's almost harder to understand than what people like Fetzer are doing. It's really weird.
But he's blowing the lid off the damage of the. The jibby jab. And again, if people understood 9/11 and the psychological operation that it was, then maybe COVID would have never happened. So people need to go back to that, because that is one of the biggest events changing the way that the world worked in a way, because the Patriot Act, planes being patted down, what you're allowed on a plane or not, it's just changed everything. In that he doesn't want to go there. Again, just makes me wonder, like, why? Hopefully one day I can get a conversation going with him, a face-to-face, where I can put him in on the spot. And the other thing is, with regards to these echo chambers in the truth movement, if you want to call it that, be it now nukes or thermite, all of those guys will slack and defame Dr. Wood and ridicule her. But the only group that's actually willing to enter into an open table, open floor discussion on the evidence are the people who see past all of this. But Jean Larotonda, he runs the 9/11 War Room. You've got Architects for Engineered Truth. You've got the International Center for 9/11 Justice Suppression, and none of these guys would go into a Zoom like you and I have now and discuss the evidence, because I personally think deep down inside they know that as soon as they've got to enter into such a conversation, their jig is up.
Yeah, I agree. There'll be nothing else to talk about. And I think one of the reasons why we don't get invited on things is because we haven't got anything new to tell them. We've been saying the same thing, since 2008. Really, it hasn't changed. So it just gets boring. We don't have anything new to add. Yeah. So why would you want to have us on repeatedly to just keep saying the same things over and over again? Whereas they just have this these debates going round and round and round, and they're sort of self-perpetuating, really, and serve no purpose. But people will still listen to them. Apparently, a few people will. So that's another thing they seem to know about human psychology. People like to have these debates and stuff. Dr. Wood and I, we're not really interested in that. If you want to learn something, then talk to us. If you want to debate, then don't bother, because we're not really interested in that. We won't give you a very good debate.
Okay, but now there was a fallout after the PBD podcast, and it was discussed in their little echo chambers. And this is a statement that Gage made, and I'm not sure whether or not you or Dr. Wood follows what happens on the War Room. They upload their chats. They upload their weekly chats onto a Rumble channel, and this is a discussion that they had. So let's just listen to this quick 3-minute clip.
Before Richard was...
Wait, just move this here. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, this is Gene La Rotonda. Now, the way that I got introduced to this guy and found out about his little weekly round table that's open to anybody except me, is that he thought that I was Dr. Abraham on my Odyssey channel, and he came in and viciously attacked me like you can't believe. And I told him, look, dude, I'm not him. I'm somebody completely different or whatever. What's your issue? Thermite is complete and utter bunk. And he then came back at me with 10 points of contention against you. I wrote my little 10 points against him, and I told him, hello, like, okay, you want to discuss this? So let's discuss this. And I waited up till midnight on a Sunday evening to have this discussion after he challenged me. And as soon as I entered the room where he saw it's me, he basically kicked me out. And since then, I've been calling him out on this fact, because that was, I think, in January of the year, and he then said that we would have the conversation in 2 weeks, and I waited 2 weeks, and then I got onto the War Room again, being civil, not asking real questions, and he then said, no, but we'll have it in April, and that never happened. And ever since then, I've just been nailing him because he's disingenuous. He claims he's a Christian and he's working on being a better person and all of this kind of stuff, but he misrepresents me, he lies about me, and he's never been man enough to have this conversation that he's promised, and it's 2 years later. And again, let's have a listen here what was said about the PBD podcast. And I think I've got another link here that I would like to go into after this. Or maybe wait, let's do this first, because this is Gene and them talking about that. So let's first listen to this one.
Patrick Bet David interviewed Dr. Judy Wood. The death of Charlie Kirk has taught me something, teaching me to be a better Christian, teaching me how to have temperance and talking with people in discussion. I'm no longer going to get angry about things, or I'm going to try not to. I suffer the same problems Tucker says, where you just, I don't know, it's in you so bad that it's difficult, but I'm going to try to do a better job. I love Dr. Judy Wood as a person. She's created in the image of God. I have nothing against her personally. Her ideologies, I think, are
batshit crazy.
Yeah, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. But listening to this interview, a lot of people in the comments, this is crazy.
Yeah.
The preponderance of comments were an approval of her and chastising Patrick Bet David for not allowing her to speak. He was more than gracious. He was trying, in my opinion, so hard for her to maintain her credibility through the interview, but there was just nothing of substance in the interview.
Now, Matthew and I actually timed that one less than an hour that they actually had. And out of that whole hour, there was around about 7 minutes that they actually spent on the evidence. And then you've got the whole backstory of what she was allowed to bring with and not bring with, and all that drama. Matthew and I did a whole discussion on that. So let's just finish up here. Again, this is going to prove the disingenuousness of these people, because they've got an opinion on something that they've never, ever looked at. They've never had a book in their hand.
He tried several times. She kept using there's a new vocabulary you need to learn, redefining things. And it just, I saw it as empty. I'm sure Norman and Matthew are going to watch this and chastise me, but let's talk, guys. I'd be glad to talk. Norman and Matthew are going to watch this and chastise me, but let's talk, guys. I'd be glad to talk.
In the latest upload on this from the 16th of November, they were chuckling and laughing about how me being the only person that's not allowed in the war room. But there he says, come on, come talk. So again, and this whole conversation here is where he's lying about me as well. But I've written extensively on my Substack. Just go onto my archive, put in war room, and you'll find my breakdown of the relationship old Gene and I have.
Well, I'll tell you what, I watched it. To be completely honest, I haven't read her book. I saw a couple of interviews, but it's like nothing about her or her theory ever made me want to look into it. So I'm like, you know what? Let's watch it and let me at least understand what it is that she's trying to say. How would directed energy weapons have, from a physical standpoint, from an energetic standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from any standpoint at all? I just wanted to understand, even if I disagreed, understand where she came from in arriving at her theory.
Step one, don't call it a theory. She's got irrefutable evidence. She did an empirical study of the observable evidence that allowed her to get to a conclusive decision on that. And again, if you haven't picked up the book, then you won't understand it. So stop being disingenuous and actually be a real truth seeker and go look at both sides of the argument.
Yeah, they're all the same. I mean, that conversation which they were having, the two there, it just serves to discourage people from actually going to check it out for themselves. That's what it's for. Now, whether Gene Larotunda and his partner there realize that, I'm not sure. But, that's the end result. The end result is that people are put off. They think it's not worth looking at. It's underdeveloped. It's not really very well thought out. It's not very well based, and they won't go and look at it because those two have had that disingenuous conversation. It distracts people until it's job done, and that's exactly what Fetzer does. It's exactly what Patrick Bet-David ended up doing. Really, didn't give her a chance to sort of. He was a rubbish interview. If he'd been sincere, he would have. Even if Dr. Wood was tired or she was nervous or whatever, he would have brought out the best. But he didn't do that because and we know that he didn't want to do that because they were sent 4 books a week in advance of the interview. Dr. Wood spent $200 sending them 4 books, and they weren't even out. She had to show him her book because he didn't have it on his desk with him. What sort of preparation is that from somebody who's a very well regarded businessman?
And the thing is, he's head of research, Brandon Acito, and this is actually the second half of this video will show that. So let's quickly listen, because Brandon Acito did a whole month on his book club on Dr. Wood's book. So if they wanted somebody to really represent PBD very well, have Brandon Acito do the interview. So let's just finish up with this and listen to what Brandon Acito had to say as well, because this is the second half of the clip.
And I came away from it with zero understanding except that comparison to tornadoes that she kept bringing up.
I found that. That's the one I wanted to clip. Here it is right here. Listen to this. Whoops, of course.
Whoa, man. There seem to be 2 rivaling theories here. I think the vast majority of people don't believe that fire from the planes is what caused the building to go down the way it did, but There seems to be competing theories between the Richard Gage camp and the Judy Wood camp. Here's a little summary of what the two of them think. Richard Gage is the founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, argues that the towers were destroyed through controlled demolition using explosives. He supports this theory with several key points, like rapid collapse speeds. The tower fell at near free fall acceleration, which he claims is consistent with demolition rather than a natural collapse. And he says the molten evidence of molten metal in the rubble suggests temperatures far exceeding what jet fuel could produce. And eyewitness accounts reports of explosions before and during the collapses, which bolster his case. Gage asserts that the official explanation fails to account for these observations, and he believes pre-planned explosives were used to bring the buildings down. Now, Judy Wood's position is that as a materials engineer scientist, she thinks that direct energy weapons were used to take down the buildings. And she uses the evidence of zero resistance, zero friction, like the falling in 10 seconds and it should have taken like 90 seconds. And only 2% of the materials being there when it's usually like 15% of the height. Normally, there's 15% of the total height of the building that's left after demolition. There's only 2% left. And there's no structural damage to the, very delicate bath under the building, which keeps water from flowing in from the Hudson River. And then there were all these weird spots too where people survived somehow. Then you have the guy who was in the building, saw sunlight as he was in the building, meaning indicating that the top of the building disintegrated before the bottom of the building gave out. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that both of these things could happen at once. Like there could have been bombs that went off in the building that assisted in this, but I don't know. It's weird how little attention Judy Wood's theory gets because, I got to give a shout out to my buddy Andrew, my book club, who has really been pushing for me to talk about this topic. And I never knew about it. I never thought about this one too much. Start reading this book and I'm like, wow, like this is a scientific based argument and we got to talk about this.
500 pages of meticulous evidence.
Okay, now just if we could get back to something else that was said in that same war room.
Before Richard responds, I know he's going to want to respond. Patrick Bet-David did offer to Judy to debate with Richard, and she said, well, I don't think he would want to be part of it. And Richard hopped right on that. So, Richard, I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah, I sent to Rob, Patrick's secondhand guy there, a very keen interest in debating. So her bluff is going to be called because she really doesn't want to debate. She's obviously doesn't come off well in these forums.
Yeah. Additionally,
yes, I did have a couple of years ago a debate. An interview with Patrick Bet-David. You can find it on Rumble. It was taken down on YouTube, which he mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That was his strike, his only strike. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, maybe.
Yeah, but the thing is, that was during the COVID era, and they most probably went into that because anything and everything, it just the algorithm. As soon as the COVID was mentioned or vaccine or something like that, things got taken off, and you can definitely remember. Around about, I think it was a year ago that Germ Warfare, Jeremy Nell, and I tried to organize a debate between you and Gage, and he pretty much declined. He said, well, the only thing that I'll do is I'll do a presentation and somebody can do a presentation after me. So I don't think...
Oh, yeah. You're dealing with liars, so... Yeah. He lied there, saying, she wouldn't debate her. But yes, she would. She would, and she has. But Gage wouldn't do it on the same stage. We've got all these other people. I'm switching. You just reminded me of another thing. This guy called Ian Crane.
Okay.
He's no longer with us. You might never have heard of Ian Crane. He was a researcher, and he talked about 9/11 and stuff. He refused to share a platform with me on 9/11 stuff, and this is going back to, I think, to 2009. And I didn't know why. Well, later I got to know why, but he said he refused to share a platform with me, and I didn't ask him this. This was this guy that invited me to do a talk on the Isle of Wight on the off the south coast of England. He told me this, and he said, we're going to invite Ian Crane to an event, we're going to have a big conference. And Ian Crane said, "Oh, who are you thinking of inviting?" And he says, "Well, we're going to invite you, and then we're going to invite Andrew Johnson." "Oh, I won't share a platform with Andrew Johnson on 9/11. Why not? I would have shared a platform with him, and that's what, I would share a platform with Gage, but he won't share a platform with me.
Yeah.
So who's afraid of being, exposed?"
Well, we've got this little clip now where Gage states that he'll do it.
He's lying. That you see, that's the benefit they've got. They can lie at whatever. They can give this. This is where we're at a disadvantage. We have to be honest all the time. We can't lie at all, as we're done. These people are on the other side. They can tell the truth some of the time and lie for the rest when they need to. It's the troll's oath. The troll's oath is, "I promise to tell some truth, some truth, some half-truth, or anything but the truth." That is the oath that a troll, Richard Gage or Fetzer, would use in court, and the court would let them use that oath. "I promise to tell some truth, some half-truth, or anything but the truth." That's not the oath that we use, right? So that's the difference. So that's why it's pointless engaging with these people once you've gone beyond a certain point, because you're just going to use up your time, and they like that. Then for them, it's mission accomplished. If they've used up your time, it's their job done. They're not bothered about. They're never gonna fess up. Unless they have some kind of transcendental experience and their mind is reprogrammed, through some spiritual, awakening, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, and they're just going to carry on.
They're close to the end of their lives, so they now need to repent.
Yeah, they're still not going to do it.
Yeah, because this is where my more confrontational aspect comes from, because I, like most, went through all the conspiracy-tainment stuff, found Gage's stuff, thought that it was worthwhile, saw the Cole's experiments with his thermite stuff and all of that, and then pretty much forgot about it. 2020 rolled around, and 2022 was the 21st anniversary, and then I saw how little American kids know about it, and that reinvigorated me. Went into the debate, Facebook groups, saw that some of these guys got really good arguments, and then I just decided, okay, it's now time to revisit everything. And I started from the formation of the Scholars for 9/11, and I read everything on both sides of the argument, and just to make sure that what Dr. Wood is stating is rock solid. There's no holes. There's nothing else that people can take me out on. And that's how I honed my skills of knowing how to counter all these people. And in 2023, I went into these echo chambers of them, started asking the questions. And when they get into a difficult question, I could see the way that they pivot. And they usually have a couple of their little cronies like Jean Laratonda or David Chandler or Jonathan Cole or somebody like that in the comment sections as well, to ask additional questions to bring them back on track, to get them more stable if they got uncomfortable. And that's a question that I once asked David Chandler, the physics teacher, about Building 7, because he's the one that's got NIST to say, yes, there was free fall. But when you ask him about the anomalous seismic readings, he just says, "Oh, I'm not a seismologist, so I'm not even."
Yeah, well, David Chandler's another dishonest person. I mean, it's my understanding that he was sacked from his teacher's job because he assaulted a student.
Okay.
It's something like that. There's something in his past, and it was the same with Jeff Brazier. These are not honest people.
Yeah.
They're not honest people with a conscience who are. The idea of repenting, or the idea of saying, they were initially wrong and now they stand corrected, it's not in their vocabulary, it's not in their psyche. And you can't believe how many of these people there are who are like this.
But that's also what I can't understand with especially David Chandler, because here he is and he's stating that the government narrative with regards to Building 7 and the towers, and they love talking about the North Tower's antenna that drops initially first, and as if that is now the answer to what happened to the bloody building. And with Adam Eisenberg, the Pentagon whistleblower, he was the old guard soldier, and he got into a conversation with Chandler, and he said, "But dude, I was there. I was moving bodies. I was moving all the rubble out of there. I used to work for UPS for Pratt and Whitney, where they had engine parts. And if I look back to that now, all these years, I was suspect of what I saw there, and there was nothing really of a plane." And David Chandler started screaming at him, stating that he's got to be suffering from some sort of PTSD, and he got really, really upset. And luckily, Adam Eisenberg is now writing a book, and he's going to be bringing out all his interactions with these guys, just like you did. And again, how can you have this DC event where they had David Chandler making the case for a plane? You had another gentleman there making a mathematical case that no plane could have hit it. So, and they also made a point of having Jonathan Cole there to give a presentation on why it's not Dr. Wood's work, but it gives you this idea of they defending themselves whilst they are still pushing out a certain narrative. And it's like this little honeypot. It's basically, if you want to see who all the disinformation agents are, just go look at all the faces who were at the DC event. And it's insane. I want to start finishing off. There's two gentlemen that I want to discuss as well. I recently had a discussion with a gentleman with the name of Chuck Fall. He's part of the organization Truth Action Project. And I had a falling out with Truth Action Project around about 2 years ago, because I was asking them if I could share some information with them relating to Dr. Wood's work. They were making hoo and ha about how they can't do it. It's not part of their whole operational plan. But again, they all little Richard Gage followers, most probably with vested interest, because a lot of them are on their possibly getting some sort of financial assistance, because A&E is made $7.5 million in the last 10 years alone. And I did a whole article on that. So after Chuck Fall spoke to me and we had a very, very good conversation, he then went into the war room conversations, and I just want to play what he had to say to them. And then you can again see what a gatekeeper role this Jean LaRotonda plays. So I want to just quickly do this, as we're going to be this one, and then we're just going to speak about another gentleman, and then we will be done.
Can't hear anything.
Oops, daisy. Okay, let's close that. Let's do. Oh, I forgot to share. Sorry about that. Share screen. Then let's put that in there. Sorry.
Chuck.
Pause that. Why am I struggling so with my screen sharing today?
Okay, I did take some notes.
Right on.
Yeah, but to be efficient. And
thank you.
So I watched last week's show, and I made comments in the Rumble. And the news highlights that really captured me were the Rupert discussion of Dick Cheney, that Dick Cheney basically did 9/11. It wasn't Mossad. The firemen told the story of South Tower coming down and running, and the wind and the sound. And so I think the truth movement, in our broad movement, if there's going to be such a thing, has to be agnostic on exactly what technology was used to annihilate the buildings. And so we have to speak to the evidence. I don't think we should say explosives made the buildings collapse. I don't think we should say the buildings collapsed, nor pancaked, since that wouldn't actually be accurate. I think we should say the buildings were turned to dust through unknown technology. So we need to explain the high winds and the sounds. I don't think we can say those sounds and the winds came from collapsing buildings because the buildings turned to dust. I think we should build a consensus around a claim of treason against the people that did this. And that goes back to the news report from last week from Rupert, who says Cheney and Secret Service ran this parallel deep state continuity of government operation and did the deed. So we should be asserting treason against Cheney. And I think there's a consensus for that. And I'd like to know if anybody objects to saying that we in the truth movement should communicate alleged treason charges for the 9/11, for covering up the crime. Say why you would object. I'd like to know. Chuck out.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I got a few comments about that. One, not all collapses are demolitions, but all demolitions have a collapse. So a demolition is a type of collapse. It's just nuances in words. And two, to say that we should be agnostic and then say that it turned to dust and it's a directed energy weapon is not being agnostic. We can be, by searching through the evidence, that active thermitic chips were found in the dust. It may not have been the primary mechanism, but it was a mechanism as part of the demolition collapse that happened to the towers.
Sure.
You can also say that there were explosions because 4-ton steel panels do not eject laterally between 50 and 80 miles an hour by anything other than an explosion. Not even a directed energy weapon could do that.
And they did not turn to dust.
And they
Exactly.
Nothing.
Did not turn to dust.
It's nothing demolecular.
Yes, they did.
Wait, hang on. Don't interrupt me. Because there are not a bunch of steel molecules laying all over the ground. There was no steel molecules found in the dust. There were iron spheres found in the dust, which was a byproduct. If you throw one of these active thermitic chips in a calorimeter, close it up, closed system, and you heat it up and you open it up, there's an iron microsphere. It came from the active thermitic chips. That's all I'm going to say about that, but thank you. Going on to Carl.
And the best thing is here is that in the Cole presentation that he did, Bob Greenier was there and he completely explained to them how you can make iron-rich microspheres using electricity with a special thing that he showed him, a $500,000 gizmo where they can take carbon and turn that into
right. Sure. I mean, none of that matters though, because Gene Lorotonda, I mean, I'd never heard of him. I mean, until I saw his name in an email that you sent round. He's another one. He's not interested in the truth. Somehow he's got into his brain that it's thermite, and he won't ever admit that he's wrong. I don't know how he's got that.
He's also ex-Navy who had security clearance, and he was working on the nuclear submarine.
That's probably half of the reason then. I don't know whether you've read the 9/11 and ChatGPT book by
John Harold and
Morgan Reynolds yet.
Yes,
why I'm bringing that up is I've just got to chapter 20, and did you know, you may already know this, I didn't know this, that there were Navy photographers photographing the site. Why were the US Navy photographing the site? Well, maybe that's got, Gene Lorotonda's got some, maybe he was one of the photographers, or maybe he was part of the same team. Probably naval intelligence. Maybe the Navy knows about this technology either they have got their, dirty mitts on it, or they know who has, and they've got to keep it covered up for whatever reason. So so that right there, I mean, I didn't know he was, but that makes it all make sense.
And Bob
He cannot.
Greenyer-
So once you learn, if I learned something like that about somebody like that, I won't even bother talking to them. They'll just say, tick them off the list, right? Bye. I don't ever want to really talk about that person again, unless they come to me and say, "Oh, Andrew, I read your page, and yep, I understand now. I understand that." No, they're never going to say that. Yeah. They're never going to say it. So I'm just going to go on to the next person.
Bob Greenyer, in that conversation that you guys had, where he was talking about his story, he showed a Navy patent pertaining that basically proves that's comes down to a justification patent in any case.
Yes.
So that's very, very telling. So two last things. I want to now discuss somebody else who's making great inroads into bringing the information to people. Catherine Austin Fitz was on Tucker Carlson's podcast talking about breakaway civilizations.
I met her.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm getting to. And she mentioned the 2012 Breakthrough Energy Conference. She was going on about if we take this breakthrough energy and
do you know who else? Do you know who else was at the 2012 BEM conference? David Martin.
Oh, okay.
The Dr. David Martin of COVID skeptics fame. Go and look at his talk.
And there was another gentleman in the question and answer session for Dr. Wood, who was a good friend of Stephen E. Jones.
Sterling Allen, the paedophile who was banged up. Yeah, he was there too.
Okay, interesting. It's strange how these guys all have checkered past.
Yeah.
So she was talking to Tucker about all of this and how dangerous it is if a rogue element can get this and weaponize it and all of this kind of stuff. But she didn't mention anything about Dr. Wood whatsoever. Tucker Carlson has spoken to. This is clips that I had on here, but then we're going to be busy for 4 hours.
I think the reason why Catherine Austin Fitz doesn't mention it is slightly different. I think Catherine Austin Fitz is a good person. She is basically an honest person. But the reason why she doesn't mention where did the towers go and the directed energy weapons technologies, knowledge of that would really undermine everything else that she talks about and her, the whole way that the financial system and the financial model and all of that malarkey that she talks about, which I don't really understand, but I think she does. And I think in the context of what she talks about, that's right, and I think she's been honest and valid and everything, and good analysis and all that. But when you understand the implications of the technology and the evidence, all that changes overnight, and that's why people like Catherine Austin Fitz won't talk about it, because they would have to change their game then. They would have to start talking about something else, and they don't really want to do that because they've spent so long talking about this, the Solari thing that she's been doing for 20 odd years or whatever it is. And it's good stuff, don't get me wrong. She's nothing like Fetzer, but it's another way that the cover-up is kept going.
No, but she talks about Mr. Global and everything and this coming technocracy and all of that. But if you want to cut Mr. Global short under the knees, you've got to expose the weaponized breakthrough energy that everybody saw.
Yeah, and I think you just made me think of something there. The word technocracy is used a lot now, and I think it's right. I think that is what's happening, but it seems to have kind of supplanted New World Order.
Yes.
Less people say New World Order now, and they now say a technocratic AI society or something like that. And maybe they're one and the same thing, but it's interesting how the language has kind of evolved. I didn't really think of that until you said what you said. Until Alex Jones was talking about New World Order, and Patrick Wood, he talks about the technocracy, and David Hughes, of course, has talked about that, Ian Davis. But all of that, again, is completely transformed when you understand about what happened at the World Trade Center, and none of them kind of will integrate that into their sort of presentations and their ethos, as it were. They don't do it.
But that's exactly with Catherine Austin Fitz talking about that with Carlson. Carlson was on Shawn Ryan's show talking about black ops technologies and all of this, because he was referring back to the interview that Shawn Ryan had with Colonel John Alexander and all of that. Even when Rogan had Shawn Ryan on talking about John Alexander as well, keeping in mind Rogan has got his book. And then John Alexander is also talking about, not John Alexander, Shawn Ryan is talking about directed energy weapons and the voice of God technologies and all of that kind of stuff. So he's well aware of this technology.
But Alex Jones did the same thing. He was talking about holograms of Allah back in 2006. These giant holograms of Allah being put out in the Middle East somewhere, and yet he wouldn't talk about the holographic image projection of the planes. So again, there are these points that they won't go to, even though they've been talking about what sounds like the same thing. They won't go into this particular sphere of discussion.
I just wish I can walk up to them and I just slap them and say, come on, stop lying, you arsehole.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Here it is. Why are you even having this conversation? Look at these pictures. Go through it.
So
1, 2, 3. It's all there. Oh yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah. No, it doesn't happen. It does not happen. And it is infuriating.
So now, our last gentleman, and I've gotten a hell of a lot of flack because he went onto the Solari report, talked about Dr. Wood. He's written numerous articles, but there's a section where he's critical. Now, in this clip, he makes some good points. He's also going to mention about certain other aspects that I'm not really queued up about. And I would find it really interesting to watch a conversation between him, you, or Dr. Wood. So I personally feel that he's a good guy. A lot of people seem to not agree with me. So let's quickly roll this, and I would love to hear your opinion.
Okay.
Let's do a share.
My personal view, at least, I don't think that whatever destroyed the Twin Towers was aerial. The space beams slur is often used against Dr. Wood, but I debunk that slur in my writings. If you think back to the image I showed of the buildings turning to powder and some of the material being ejected upwards as well as outwards, that to me would suggest that the direction of the force being applied was upwards, actually, not downwards. So I think there's different technologies probably at play here. And just in terms of that image again, I mean, this would seem to be consistent with the idea of some kind of cold fusion mini nuke, potentially. That's an idea which I don't think anyone has ever proposed, but it's kind of where I sit with this. And one of the problems with the 9/11 truth community is it's divided very rigidly into camps. And so you have people in the mini nukes camp, and they viciously attack everyone else. And then you have people in the nanothermite camp, and they make up lies about everybody else. And then you have people in the Dr. Wood camp who won't hear a single bad word said against her and are completely shut off to all of the other camps. And so it becomes very hardened and not actually very productive. But the way I look at it, and this is why I quite like the work of Heinz Pommer, even though I disagree with him on temperatures, is that some of the evidence that Pommer provides does actually appear to be consistent with some kind of mini nuclear weapon in terms of the dust clouds and the rocket trails and other visible evidence. But at the same time, we know it was cold. And so that would point in the direction, in my opinion, of some kind of cold fusion mini nuke. Now, again, that probably puts me in a minority of one, but I don't care. That's the way it appears to me.
Well, that's also smarter if it's N, then you have all these factions fighting, and it's probably multiple technologies that were being deployed. So Judy Wood also presents this hurricane theory, but you dismiss this.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one example of, despite the fact I defend the fundamentals of Wood's work and understand the pivotal importance of it. I don't go along with absolutely everything that she says just because she's Judy Wood. And there are two areas in particular where I disagree with her, and it really doesn't matter because, as I say, 98% of the material I think is solid. But just for the record, it's Hurricane Erin. And again, all of this is in my presentation and my article. I don't think that Hurricane Erin actually had anything to do with the destruction of the Twin Towers. And the magnetometer data that Wood presents as well, I don't think actually bears any meaningful relation to the destruction of the buildings. But as I say, these are relatively minor points. The key evidence is what I presented earlier and what I'm entirely on board with.
So, yeah.
By the way, I've met David Hughes more than once.
Okay, so what conversations have you guys had?
Well, we didn't talk specifically about what he mentioned there. I've exchanged a few emails with him. I actually helped him set up a website as well. Oh. So he knows me quite well. And when that clip came out, I was quite shocked, actually. I will say that quite openly. Because clearly, he's been a defender, if you want to call it that. But I think what in that clip it comes out, he's trying to personalise it all to Dr. Judy Wood, which we've sort of tried to avoid. Her name has become synonymous with the evidence, unfortunately, whereas the evidence should be divorced from her name as far as it can be. Now, and she has actually said that, so I'm not taking anything away from her. And clearly, I think David Hughes has made a mistake in that presentation. Clearly, we can see, for example, in the magnetometer data, that there's this dip at 8:46 when the first plane hole appeared. So that I would challenge him on, because that does have something to do with the destruction of the buildings. For him to say that it doesn't, I think, is silly, really. He talks about Heinz Pomner. Well, what's he talking about? Nukes again. So we're back to Fetzer again. So David Hughes is almost putting himself into a similar position as Fetzer. If you think about it, it's not that far away. Now, you can see the coincident movements of the hurricane with the events of 9/11. So for him to sort of say it's got nothing to do with it, I think that's a bit silly, really. So for him, he doesn't really bring up the Hutchison Effect. I can't remember what he says about that.
Yeah, very little, very little.
Very little, yeah. So this is what I noticed years and years back. People are happy to talk about the energy effects, but then they'll stop. And people, I could probably think of one or two people like David Hughes, had no problem with what Dr. Wood was saying, but they would stop short of the Hutchison Effect. They would stop short of Hurricane Erin. And they didn't want to go there, because to me that ties the whole thing together. And as I've said, you've probably heard me say this, when you take what's in Where Did Towers Go book and you process it all mentally, the energy scarcity paradigm is gone. The climate change paradigm is gone. The global terrorism narrative is gone. It's all untrue. It's all a scam. It's all, you can forget about it. And I think there is a number of people that have been tasked with sort of, again, limited hangouts. Yeah, we can let the energy one. Yeah, we know about free energy. We know about Tesla and stuff, but we're not going to go into the climate change. We're going to leave that. And there are still terrorists out there, Muslim terrorists. And so they'll try and keep one or two of those three. They won't let go of all three, like you will see if you honestly read Where Did the Towers Go. And I think David Hughes, for whatever reason, has fallen into that camp as well, if you want, or fallen into that group of people, I might say. Clearly, he's an intelligent man. He's read the book. He's talked about the book. He's done some good research. He found some stuff out about thermite I didn't know. He did find some stuff out about Hurricane Erin, I think. I remember reading something that he'd written. But it seemed to have an ulterior goal of saying, well, yes, that means it's got nothing to do with 9/11. No, David.
And he's also talked about his interactions with Ken Jenkins, Niels Harrod, Richard Gage, and all these guys, where they pull them into a little group. And when he asked Gage about the Freon tanks and the so-called heat that were in the basements, they were hardly undamaged. And Richard Gage didn't even know about that. So he's done with his
he's done some good stuff. Yeah,
with his defense of Dr. Wood was really good. And then you had other people attack him on Substack, and there's a Neil Francis or something out of the UK.
I never heard of him. Yeah, I never heard of him.
So it's an important guy. You should go read his Substack where he answers this guy from the UK, because this guy is apparently a mover and shaker in the COVID truth sphere now as well. So I think it might be an aspect where Dr. Hughes hasn't really looked into the Tesla technologies, because I've seen other articles.
I think he has looked into it. I just think he doesn't want to talk about it. I think he's deliberately avoiding it and knowingly avoiding it. I could be wrong. You could be right. But that and if he's talking about Heinz Pomner, who's just another nuker,
but he's speculating here. No, he's speculating about how it was done. So you shouldn't speculate on how it was done, where it was placed, because the only people who know are the guys who did it, and the first people to go and ask about it is ARA and SIAC, because that's what they specialize in, and they were the defendants.
Yeah. So why doesn't David Hughes say that? He's an intelligent man. And that we've gone through all this. You've seen it. You know it. You understand it. You haven't got a PhD. I haven't got a PhD. He has. He should know. He should be able to see
German studies.
Yeah, whatever it is. But he's had to do a PhD, which involves a lot of commitment to rigorous study and presentation. Way more. And you look at his output. The guy is prolific. He does remind me a little bit of Fetzer in that regard, who's also got about 25 blogs that he updates every single day. So
did you see the interview that I did with Dr. Hughes? Because
no, I didn't. Not all of it.
It was a really, really good
I'm sure
interview, because I was planning the same thing now with you, with playing clips and then discussing it. But when we got to it, he had a presentation or ready for it on certain of the talking points, because way before our conversation, I just said, well, if we have a conversation, this is just some ideas that I'll spitball, and that was just in an email. I wasn't planning on doing anything like that, but he had certain.
He's very thorough. He's very thorough,
and he went and looked at Mark Conlin's work and all of that. So he's definitely on the 3D volumetric projection angle.
But he's done a great job on the Manchester Arena research. When and he found stuff out that Richard D. Hall hadn't found out. Loads of stuff, and some important stuff as well, actually. So it's a real mystery to me what he's done. Why he would say what he said in that video. It's just a total mystery, And he hasn't contacted me about it. He hasn't either asked me or challenged me on anything, So I'll leave him to it.
Should we organize a conversation, the three of us, and see where it leads?
You can write to him and ask if you want. I'd be willing to chat with him, but I don't want to do it myself. I can't be bothered really. But if you want to do it, and you ask me, and he's up for it, I'll do it. Okay. But there's other things I'd rather be doing these days. To be fair, I've done it as I've said to you before.
Got the t-shirt.
Yeah, pretty much. That's yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
No, leave it to the youngsters now, so to say.
Yeah, but it's the way I work generally, though, Norman. If I'll do my own thing, and then if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, Andrew, can you do this?" I'll normally say, "Yeah, if you want." If that's what you want to do, that's normally the way I run my life. So, if he's up for it, and you tell him what the deal is, and I'll do it.
Okay, so parting wisdom. What would you suggest? Somebody in my position, Matthew from Canada, Mystic Bazaar out of the UK, KJ out of France, who's doing a lot of pro Dr. Wood stuff, and he's a real mover and shaker in France now. And he even got 9/11 Alchemy Facing Reality translated into French.
Great.
So there's a lot of people breaking the mold, and there's definitely a shift, especially under the youngsters today, that can see through all the drivel and that are a lot more open to what Dr. Wood presents. And even Chuck from Truth Action Project, obviously he's been following some of my work, and the conversation that we had also proves that more people are willing to look at this. And even with the Jonathan Cole Boston 9/11 thing, they had this Raul Aguilo or whatever, one of the FDNY guys who's doing a major move into things, who's also open to having an open discussion on that. How should we go about just keep on fighting? Because these other guys got PR firms running around getting them.
I think you've just got to, Norman, really, I've got to go soon. It's getting late now. Yeah. I know it's later for you, but, you know, you can carry on doing what you're doing. Do what you think is best for your situation. You said it right there, really. These people seem to have some money behind them. You're up against the intelligence agencies or some rogue branch of them or something. These are well-funded people. They have technology, they have cash, they have psychology, they have media at their disposal. So, yeah, do what you can against that sort of armory. But live your life, you know, and make time for your own interests and your own things as well, and your family and your friends, because don't wear yourself out. You know, I've seen other people wear themselves out, and I didn't wear myself out. I decided, you know, when I wanted to stop, and I stopped. Or, you know, and when I say that, I don't mean stop completely. Obviously, I'm still talking to you right now, but I decided when, you know, I was going to change and just concentrate on other things, you know. But and then, like I say, if people come to me and say, Andrew, can you do a talk? Can you do a podcast? Pretty much I'll say, yeah, you know. So that's been my word of wisdom. Just do things on your own terms. And even though you get upset that there's all these people not seeing the obvious things, I've just got to leave it and get on with what you know, and go on to the next person. Go on to the next person, because the next person that you find might just be the person that was receptive, you know, and they're going to thank you for showing them, you know. And I'm sure you've had a bit of that. I've certainly had lots of that in the background. So focus on that side of things, on the 5 people a year, the 5 people a week, the 5 people a month that write it. Oh, thanks, Norman. Oh, thanks, Andrew. That's really helped me understand that now. And I know those guys there, they're just idiots or whatever. And I've had a few of those messages, you know, and that's fine. And that's the way I look at it now. I'm not interested in forming a big group to, you know, get on Joe Rogan or anything like that. If Joe Rogan invites me on, fantastic, you know, great stuff. I'll go on, but I'm not holding out for it. So, you know, and I'm not gonna badger these people to get me on. You know, if you want to do it, I'll let you do that. But I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to, you know, just do my own thing until somebody asks me otherwise.
And what do you think is going to happen with the 25th anniversary? Because we have now found a replacement to take the attention away from it, with Charlie Kirk being shot on September 10th. And that
I didn't know. I'd forgotten that was the date. Yeah.
And that took all the emphasis away from the DC event.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even connect the two things, Norman. Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens. You know, we can be prepared for things, you know. I mean, all I can do is send out books and leaflets, which is what I've been doing since 2011. So I'm just going to carry on doing that. Yeah, I mean, you know, we can maybe post an article or something, but have a little online conference or something. But we won't be saying anything new, you know, I don't think, unless somebody comes out of the woodwork, somebody like Adam Eisenberg, and gives us some extra information we didn't have before.
Yeah.
You know,
he's actually gotten a person of real interest. That
right, well, good.
Specialist in directed energy weapons, that type of technologies. He was in the World Trade Center in 2001. He was at the Pentagon. Yeah, so his book is going to be is one of the first real suspects that you can tie to this technologies that might know what happened there. So it's going to be interesting to see when this book comes.
Maybe that'll come out for the 25th anniversary. Then let's see.
Yeah. So,
okay then.
Okay, where just to kind of finish off, where can people find you if they want to see more of what you've done through the last 18 years?
Yeah, well, it's all at checktheevidence.com, as you've linked to many times, and thanks for promoting my free books. You can get the 2 9/11 books there, and there are another 5 books on that website as well about different topics, the secret space program and aliens, UFOs, climate change, the Earth expansion. There's all kinds of stuff on there, so it's not just 9/11 that I've looked at, but it is all connected. So yeah, you can write to me there, click on the contact button, send me a message. I reply to most of the messages as long as they're not about flat Earth, which of course is a total scam. And yeah, so yeah, if any follow-up questions from this evening or any of the books that I've written or anything like that, I'll try and answer them.
Okay, awesome. Let me stop the recording and then I'll say goodbye to you off air.
Okay then.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Norman.